Good evening. Welcome to the July 24th, 2020 special meeting of the San Mateo County Harbor District. Melanie, can you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Chang-Corrali?
Present.
Commissioner Lorenas?
Here.
Commissioner Ryring?
Here.
Commissioner Matoush?
Here.
Commissioner Brennan?
Here.
Great. We're going to begin with public comments this evening. The public may address the board for up to 2 minutes. And let me make sure that I can see if anybody has their hand raised here. We have James Lee. James, can you unmute?
Thank you. Holding a special meeting at the start of a weekend shows a massive level of disrespect, not just to the public, but your own staff. President Ryring made a mendacious argument at the July 15th meeting that Commissioner Brennan held lots of special meetings when she was board president. Most of those were for committee meetings, and they were noticed as special meetings to allow the full board to participate. And the schedule of committee meetings was also available on the district's website for anyone to see, which is not the case anymore. Your special meetings are being utilized to limit public participation and limit the public and members of the board from being able to adequately prepare for agenda items. It's not the same thing as holding special meetings to encourage full board participation, and you know it. Briefly, I'm requesting that the consent item on COVID-related financial relief be pulled off consent. The board should discuss the alternatives presented, where you can forgive anywhere between 25 to 100% of rent for 3 months. By putting this item on consent, you're preventing discussion of that option. People are being hard financially by COVID, and this deserves to be discussed properly. Finally, at the July 15th meeting, Commissioner Matoush made a bunch of incoherent and derogatory and untrue statements about Commissioner Brennan, claiming that she, an out lesbian, commits violence on gays and extortion. He also made the laughable, untrue claim that she had asked for the pornographic photos which he had sent to her. And it's interesting how he and other members of the board have tried to question Sabrina's integrity for not coming forward about the harassment she experienced sooner, when he himself wasn't able to volunteer this novel defense until years after the issue was first brought up. Let's be very clear about what Mr. Matoush did at the July 15th meeting. This is a violation of the Harbor District's own sexual and unlawful harassment policy, your own code of ethics and values, and the code of conduct for elected and appointed officials. By choosing to remain silent and do nothing, and by censuring the victim, President Ryring and Commissioner Chang-Corrali are enabling these violations of policy and are continuing the toxic culture of harassment and retaliation. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands raised. Lizzie, do you?
President Ryring, Brent Turner is raising his hand, not in the app.
Okay, Brent Turner,
You can
unmute
unmute him.
yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, commissioners. My name is Brent Turner. I'm here today to speak about the COVID environment. I'm working with a citizens group that was instrumental in closing down the beaches on the 4th of July, and we have Memorial Day, Labor Day, pardon me, coming up now to consider. And so we're looking for the harbor to be very strict in closing down the harbor for obvious health and safety reasons. In witnessing this event today and hearing James Lee's comments, I'm hearkened back to the previous meeting that I witnessed, and I'm sort of in shock about what's happening in our town here. It appears that there is I don't want to say a vendetta, but some extreme bad blood occurring. And I'm really shocked at the behavior of the group here. I've taken a look and it appears that there's a long history. Can we please stop this behavior? And Tom, I'm talking to you. I saw that thing last meeting, and I think we're all under the fog of war of the pandemic, but there's really no excuse for this sort of behavior. We saw what happened with Alexandria Cortez and the bullying that's occurring from the Republicans toward these Democratic women. And I just want to put it on record. I think it's horrific. And I think we should act like adults and get back to the business at hand, closing down this harbor immediately. And thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. John Ullum, I see your hand raised.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you for having me here. Just wanted to add to James' comments that I mean, I've seen some pretty horrible things. But for Tom Matoush to accuse a woman of wanting it, this is it's just beyond the pale. But the only thing that was actually worse than what Tom did was that President Waring thanked him for it. Right after he got done accusing Commissioner Brennan of, you know, unverifiable, unsubstantiated, and slanderous comments, the board president thanked Tom Matoush for saying it. And I was just wondering how far you've come, President Waring, from the person who published a letter to the editor demanding that Tom Matoush resign for the despicable conduct that he finds amusing, to thanking him for telling the woman he sent the pictures to, the pornography, that she wanted it. It's just unbelievable. Thank you.
President Reiring, I don't see any more hands raised.
I don't either. Thank you, Lizzie. So we'll move on to the consent calendar. We have a single item on the consent calendar this evening. Is there anyone who has a question or comment about this item? If not, I will.
Commissioner Lorenz has his hand up. Commissioner Lorenz has his hand up.
I don't even see him on my screen. Where is he? Okay, Commissioner Lorenz, go right ahead.
I'd like to pull item 1, please, from consent.
All right, we'll put that on the end of the agenda for tonight.
And I'd like to point out this is a chronic problem with Zoom when the commissioners are silenced.
All right, so we're going to hear that. Commissioner Chen Crawley, did you have a question? No. All right, so we're going to move on to item number 1, charges for services and rent. And Julie, this is your item.
Okay. Just for verification, you want to hear the charges for services and rent first?
Oh no, I'm so sorry. I'm putting that at the end of the agenda. I'm having to work between different devices tonight. Excuse me. I'm moving on to the first discussion item. We're going to move the pulled item to the end of the discussion items. So the first discussion item is item number 2, public hearing for final 2020-21 operating budget and capital improvement program. And Julie, this is your item.
Okay, good evening, President Reiring, commissioners. This is a public hearing to allow interested members of the public to provide input into the final adoption of the 2021 operating budget and 5-year capital improvement program. This document is essentially the same as the adopted preliminary budget, except that an additional estimated $500,000 has been added to Surfers Beach Restoration Project for remediation of eelgrass, which has been found around the launch ramp. This time is an unprecedented time, and there are many unknown factors that may affect the assumptions made for the development of this budget document. Staff will continue to monitor the economic indicators and changes to state and federal laws that may significantly impact the budgetary assumptions. In the event that expenditures need to be cut in future fiscal years due to unanticipated changes to the assumptions, staff will bring forward information to plan for cuts in expenditures or increases in available resources. At a very high level summary of this budget, it estimates $12 million in revenues, $11.3 million in expenses, leaves $700,000 expected increase in working capital. The expected fiscal year end working capital balance as of June 30th, 2020 is $18.9 million. Of this amount, $3.1 million is set aside as a reserve per the district's reserve policy, and $3 million is expected to be spent on capital projects for this fiscal year. The capital program has identified unfunded projects of about $29.1 million and expects to fund about $14.3 million in capital projects over the next 5 years. Staff recommends that the board approve the budget document and adopt resolution 20-12. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Julie. Commissioner Chang-Karali?
I'll
Commissioner
make a
Chang-Karali?
motion. Hello?
Yep, I hear you.
I will make a motion to adopt resolution 20-12, approving the final budget for the fiscal year 2020 to 2021, the operating budget and 5-year capital improvement program.
Do we have a second for that motion? Commissioner Matoush?
Second on the motion.
All right, thank you. We'll move to board discussion. Any board member comments? I just see 2 members of the public who would like to make comments. So I'll move to them since I don't see other hands raised. James Lee.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to point out that at the May 14th CIP meeting, which was mentioned in the staff report, President Reiring said, it was at that meeting that President Reiring said that there's an issue of equity with these meetings, that it's hard for people to attend these meetings and there needs to be more done and to consider equity, which really begs the question as to why this was scheduled for Friday at 6:30 through a special meetings process. Special meetings should ideally be for emergency situations only, like the COVID-19 rent forgiveness agenda item you have coming up. They should not be used to finalize a full 5-year CIP program for Oyster Point and Pillar Point, especially when you called out equity issues on May 14th. So I can only assume that you don't care anymore, or you didn't care in the first place in May, and we're just talking to talk. Real quickly, about some of the CIPs mentioned in the document, I just want to be really clear that the original JPA between South City and the Harbor District makes it very clear that South City owns its infrastructure and the Harbor District manages it. The Harbor District is not and should not be responsible for improvements to infrastructure itself. That should be paid for by South City. And hello to the South City Council people and Planning Commission members and candidates for Harbor District who are watching this Zoom meeting. But just to be really clear, this is unacceptable for many reasons, but it's now allowable because the current board majority helped to fashion the MOU in 2018, which now puts the Harbor District on the hook for city infrastructure. So I want to be really clear that what you all are voting for right now includes voting for county taxpayers to be funding city infrastructure. I'm all for dock replacement. I'm all for dock surveys. That's all important, but the infrastructure itself should be paid for by the city of South San Francisco. Thank you.
John Ullum, you have your hand up.
To follow up with what Jane was saying there, there is so much that's left to be done at Pillar Point Harbor. And Pillar Point Harbor is where people make a living. There's men out there and women out there who go out fishing every day and trying to maintain a lifestyle that's really unique, really a valuable component to the coastside and to the counties. Oyster Point is a marina, and it does not belong to the county. It doesn't belong to the people of San Mateo County. It belongs to South San Francisco. And because the board, majority at the time, Corrali and Matoush and Bernardo, didn't even trust Miss Raring enough to vote on those obligations that they foisted upon this current board, they voted to commit to spending money on the infrastructure that they don't own. And that's going to really hurt the kind of stuff that needs to be done here at Pillar Point, where again, that's a unique resource. There's nothing like it on the coast from hundreds of miles. It's a working harbor. People come here to pick up fish live off the boat. There isn't anything like that anywhere else. Yet we're spending all that money to refurbish docks that frankly, you're not even sure people are going to use. There's been no effort to determine whether this money is being well spent, seeing as there no longer is a fuel dock out at Oyster Point. And I believe that those docks were meant to be for very large boats. So of course, there's going to need to be dredging to make it useful for them. And it's in their budget simply because you're obligated, not because it's a good idea, not because it's the best way to spend the money, but because of a stupid contract that you signed.
Commissioner Brennan, you have your hand raised.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't want to jump in front of any public members, so I don't know if anyone else, if you had any other public members who wanted to speak. If you do, I can wait.
We have a member of the public, Kimberly. Would you like to go ahead?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just have a question for the commissioners. I filled out the survey and I carefully researched all of the topics, and I have been unable to find the results of the survey on your website. Are the results of the survey posted somewhere where we can actually see the tallies of who voted, you know, of how many votes came in for which topics?
So, yeah, so Kimberly, is that Kim?
Kimberly.
What I recommend that you contact our general manager after the meeting.
Okay, I'm happy to do that, but I thought that in the interest of transparency, that should probably be posted for the public so that they know that they can see that.
Yeah, it is posted. It's been posted and available online. Public comment actually isn't a time when we can have a chat about this, but you can contact me after the meeting, or you can contact our general manager after the meeting.
Okay, I'm happy to do that, but what I'm talking about is the results, not the survey itself. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brendan, I think you can go ahead. I don't see any other hands up. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay, I just unmuted myself. I would like to say, as a point of order before I start my comment related to the budget, that I think that having commissioners muted makes it very difficult for us to do our jobs, and it's not appropriate for the board president to mute your fellow commissioners. So I would appreciate it if you would please stop muting your fellow commissioners. We're capable of muting ourselves if we're shuffling papers or something like that. So going forward, I'd appreciate it if you would not mute commissioners. All right, so on to the budget. I did want to mention that I appreciate staff's amazing work in putting this together, and particularly Julie, but I know everybody worked on it. And there's some great projects that we have in the works that are really exciting. I'll name a couple just to kind of familiarize people who maybe haven't heard about them. One is the West Shoreline Trail project. That project is so needed and will provide access for the public and for people that are in wheelchairs and bicycles and baby strollers out to Mavericks Beach. So that's a project that is listed in the budget, and it's something that's in the works. So I'm excited about that project. Also, the restroom project at Surfers Beach is something that's going to be very community serving, and for everyone who recreates on the coastside, visitors and residents, they're all going to benefit from this, because right now there is no easy access to a public restroom facility in that area, and that's a very popular and heavily used beach. So there are a lot of people that are really excited about that project. There are many other exciting projects. For example, eventually it would be wonderful to see the Harbor District build an administrative building that could also serve as a community center in El Granada on the post office lot, or the lot next to the post office, I should say. Our staff has done the math, and it is apparent that it will save the district money if we build a building and no longer have to pay rent for our administrative offices. So that's an exciting project on the horizon. And there are many others, and a lot of them are included in the budget. So for anybody interested in understanding what the district is about and what we've been working on for years, the budget's a good way to kind of get a quick view of that. There are some things in the budget that I'm less excited about, and before I get into that, I want to mention that we do have a master plan included in the budget as a project that we need to get to. But there's no mention about the strategic plan that we have not completed yet. So I just want to remind everybody that we really should have already completed our strategic plan well over a year ago. And if we had our strategic plan done, that would help us as a guide in the budget process. And it would also help us move along eventually with a master plan, because the strategic plan and the master plan are hopefully going to be designed to work well together. So that's something that we do need to complete. So I hope we get back to that soon. And with regard to projects that have been included related to the MOU with the city of South San Francisco, which some of the, we've already heard some comments from the public on that. I'd like to mention that currently the city of South San Francisco is, they have not fulfilled the terms of the MOU. They are out of compliance with the MOU. They have not provided a replacement fuel system, and in fact have not removed the fuel tanks, the single-walled fuel tanks that are dangerous and toxic and outdated and not consistent with current Cal EPA standards. So I'm hoping that that system is going to be removed because it has already been deemed unsafe. And I hope that the city of South San Francisco will follow through on their commitment in the MOU to replace that fuel system. And there should be no delay. That should have already happened. But since it hasn't happened, the city is not in compliance with the MOU. And for that reason, I cannot support a budget that includes work that the district agreed to do in the MOU because the city of South San Francisco hasn't fulfilled their end of the bargain. So that's unfortunate, but other than that, it looks like a great budget. I'd also like to say that Johnson Pier has really suffered because of this deal that 3 board members made with the city of South San Francisco. And it's really unfortunate that our commercial fishing fleet has been robbed of an opportunity to have a renovated pier. Right now, our commercial fishing fleet is engaging in dangerous work on an unfit pier, and that pier needs to be renovated. It's unsafe. So it's important that we get that done. And, you know, it's something that we've been talking about for years. It will also help us with litigation that's ongoing and has been problematic for some time with our 3 commercial fish buyers. So there are so many reasons why we need to renovate Johnson Pier and make it safe for our commercial fishing fleet, to prioritize spending money on docks at a biotech campus. It just doesn't make any sense to me, especially given the fact that South City has not fulfilled the terms of the MOU, and there just isn't enough public benefit there to warrant it. So I'd also like to leave with saying that, reminding everybody that the Harbor District owns the land at Pillar Point Harbor, and it makes sense for us to do capital improvement projects at a facility that we own. The Harbor District does not own Oyster Point Marina. It's owned by the city of South San Francisco, and the city of South San Francisco should fund capital improvement projects at the facility that they own. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lorenz, you have your hand up.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Well, I won't belabor Sabrina's point because I do agree with them, but I will summarize them a little bit just to make a little bit of a point there. But before I do that, I would like to just say a word about the survey that Kimberly was asking about. While I don't have a lot of disagreements with this budget, in fact, I think this budget's something to be proud of. We've done a lot of work and we have some beautiful projects ahead of us. I'm very excited about the West Trail as an example, and the renovation of Surfers Beach bathrooms, and finally getting some sand over from one side of the harbor to the other at Surfers Beach. Those are all great projects, and there's many more that we can do. But the survey surveyed a very small percentage of San Mateo County, even a small percentage of the coast side. And so I would not put much, I don't think it's a good idea to even present the survey as serving the community. It doesn't speak for the entire community. I'll leave it with that as far as the survey is concerned. And with respect to South San Francisco, as Commissioner Brennan stated, it's important to note that they are out of compliance with the MOU. They're not keeping their part of the bargain, as she said. And we should not spend a penny on any infrastructure projects until they do. That's it.
Great, thank you. Julie, I had just a couple of questions before we do the roll call on this. This budget shows a 25% benefit cost increase. Is that a year-over-year increase? And what are the drivers?
Yes, it's expected that health benefit costs are going to be going up 40%. That was something that was published by CalPERS. We do not have CalPERS insurance, so that assumption could change. We do get our insurance through the 2 unions and through SDRMA, but it's indicative of the economy that we're in right now with increasing costs regarding doctors and hospitals and things of that sort. In addition, there is going to be an increase in the CalPERS retirement calculation due to the change in the discount rate. It will take a while for the retirement calculation to change significantly because there's like a 2-year lag period. So what we're seeing right now in our actuarial reports is what happened 2 years ago, as opposed to what our economic conditions are today. But then the last thing is that we filled a lot of vacancies over the past year. And so that's also increasing the benefit costs because we had so many vacancies last year that we're only looking at having, as of today, 2 vacancies.
Great, thank you, Julie. And the deferral of capital expenses until fiscal year 21-22, I'm assuming that allows us to meet our commitments under the MOU?
I'm sorry, the what of the?
The deferral of capital expenses at
You mean the unfunded projects that we've identified? Is that
Yeah.
the question? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Not funding those projects will basically get us through the next 5 years.
Okay. All right, good. Well, I think we're ready for roll call on this. I really appreciate the way, Julie, the way you worked with the Finance Committee and Finance Committee Commissioners Chang Crowley and Commissioner Matoush. Forecasting a 5-year recession due to the pandemic is a conservative forecast, and I'm glad to see that everybody's treating this matter gratefully. So, Melanie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I actually had my hand raised right now because I wanted to make another comment. And just to point out again that the muting of commissioners is preventing us from engaging in any sort of real dialogue here. And I don't appreciate that. So just want to point that out again. And I'm just going to make my comment, which is, while I really support, most of the projects included in the budget and all of the hard work staff has done, the budget looks great as far as how it's being presented, and Julie's done a great job. I cannot support a budget that harms our commercial fishing fleet and continues this really extremely unsafe working condition environment on Johnson Pier. It is completely unacceptable. And I, as I said before, cannot support spending money on capital improvement projects at a facility that the district doesn't own and is owned by a city that hasn't fulfilled the terms of their MOU responsibilities to replace the fuel system at Oyster Point Marina. Thank you. So my vote is no.
Great. Melanie, you can continue with the roll call, please?
Commissioner Chang Crowley?
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would love to support this budget for lots of reasons, and I can't, and I'm going to be consistent with my previous budget commitments, and that is I can't support a budget that spends money on South San Francisco, so I'm voting no.
Commissioner Matoush,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryring.
Aye. Thank you, Melanie. We'll move to discussion item D3, amend policy 3.2. Jim, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President and Commissioners. On the July 15th, 2020 regular meeting of the Board of Harbor Commissioners, a motion was made to approve to add to the next agenda an item to establish a policy whereby the district does not post on its agenda website written materials submitted by commissioners which do not relate to an item for discussion on the agenda, and further directed staff to assist in developing that directive. After reviewing our current policies, it's staff's recommendation to revise policy 3.2 to reflect the agenda item is voted on. The district's current policy in policy 3.2, which is the Brownout compliance policy, states all information is made available to the board except those items provided for the board for discussion at a properly noticed closed session shall be available for public review prior to the board meeting. As written, the policy is not clear about whether or not the district should post information that is submitted to the district prior to the meeting with a request to post it on the website when such information is not related to an item for discussion on the agenda. The Brown Act requires commissioner comments about matters that are not on the agenda to be strictly limited to brief statements. The proposed amendment promotes compliance with the Brown Act by limiting written comments submitted by commissioners when the information relates to a discussion that is not on the agenda. Under the proposed revised policy, such information will not be posted with the agenda prior to the meeting. The proposed revised policy also promotes the purposes of section 54.957.5 of the Brown Act related to agendas and other writings. That section requires written information which is provided to the commissioners by staff or by the public about an item to be considered on the agenda to be also made available to the public. The proposed revised policy clarifies that such information will be posted on the website with the agenda. And attached are the revised policy is also attached, in which states in paragraph E3 added, all written materials submitted to the district pursuant to California Government Code 54.957.5 that are related to a matter subject to discussion on the agenda at an open meeting shall be made available to the for public inspection and posted on the district's agenda website page. The district does not post on its website with the agenda prior to a meeting written materials submitted by commissioners about a matter that is not related to an item for discussion on such agenda.
Great, thank you, Jim. I appreciate your work on this, and I'm happy to follow the Brown Act. I'm going to make a motion that we adopt this policy. Do I have a second? And then we'll have discussion. Commissioner Chang-Karali?
I'll second.
Great, and we can have discussion here. We have Commissioner Lorenz.
If they would like to comment, then defer to them first.
You'd like to defer to who?
Any members of the public that wish to comment on this item?
Oh, okay. James Lee.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting that you're saying you're voting to stay in compliance with the Brown Act. Senate Bill 343 of the California Senate was signed in 2007. It actually requires that any public records distributed to the majority of members of a legislative body, such as yourself, less than 72 hours in advance of the meeting are required to be posted publicly. The language restricts this to regular meetings, but there's also further language saying that all records should be made available regardless of the type of meeting, whether it's open, special, committee. Obviously,
Okay,
closed
honey.
meetings are different. I can hear whoever that is. You're not muted. Real quickly as well, just to point out that you're actually going to be voting if you vote yes on this, and we pretty much know who's going to be voting yes on this. You're going to be voting not just to put yourselves out of compliance with Senate Bill 343 and the Brown Act, you're also voting as part of a long history now of retaliation against one commissioner. The reason this agenda item is even being brought for consideration is because one commissioner, Commissioner Brennan, whom you have censured in the past, submitted items for the public record for an open session agenda item as per the Brown Act. And just in line with everything else you've been doing since you became board president, Ms. Reiring, from limiting comments to 3 minutes to 2, to moving all these agenda items to a special meeting when they should be heard at a regularly scheduled time, to muting your fellow board commissioners, to also muting members of the public and cutting them off, and then absurdly offering for them to come back at a second meeting where they can't attend to make another comment. These are all in line with your retaliatory petty behavior, and this is not in compliance with the Brown Act. You will be facing litigation if you vote yes on this, and you should, because this is absolutely unacceptable, and you're putting yourself out of compliance with an aye vote. Thank you.
President Reiring, if I could just clarify, the section that he's referencing only relates to matters that are on the agenda for discussion. And this actually helps compliance with the Brown Act, because by publishing comments from a commissioner prior to the meeting, you could have on an item that's not listed on the agenda, you could have the situation where a number of commissioners engaged in a discussion about a non-agenda item if more than one submitted comments on that same issue. So I wanted to be very clear that the section that he referenced is only about matters on the agenda.
Thank you, Tricia. John Olam, you have a comment?
I find your commitment to the Brown Act at this point, Mr. Reiring, to be kind of comical. Your commitment is to the minimum. You do the very minimum. The Brown Act sets the floor. And this council majority, board majority consistently tries to find just how low the floor can be. Now, I understand that there's some talk about items being submitted to including the agenda. An example of why this needs to be done can be seen at the redo meeting that was totally provoked by a Brown Act complaint and a lame attempt to deal with it. But the lawyer, Ms. Ortiz, she chose to stonewall and say, nope, this is just about giving people another chance. It was not included in the board packet as to the letter that the board received demanding that they cure and correct the actions that they had taken. And those actions were when Ms. Reiring purposely shut down commentary that she didn't want to hear. But now tonight she's talking about how she's committed to the Brown Act, even though her commitment is so shallow that it only extends to what the law requires versus what is right, what is wrong, what is actually transparent. And that is the problem that's really bedeviling this board at this period. They won't tell you that they're under investigation right now by the district attorney for several Brown Act violations that were committed in closed session, because they want to hide everything that they can, and they will follow the letter of the law as closely as they have to, and they'll push it. And of course, Ms. Ortiz will be glad to tell them how to get away with it, what level they can push it to, because there's no interest in transparency on the part of the board majority. Thank you.
Commissioner Brennan.
So again, just a point of order. I don't appreciate being muted during the meeting. So if you could please stop muting commissioners, Commissioner Reiring, I would very much appreciate that. But I'll get on topic here. So I don't agree that this change is consistent with the Brown Act. In fact, I think it is inconsistent with the Brown Act, and I do agree with the information that James Lee provided. It was also contained in an article that was published by Hanson Bridget, which is a very reputable law firm. It's clear in the Hanson Bridget article that the new rules on the Brown Act should apply to all meetings, and there shouldn't be a limit on whether it's a commissioner comment or an agenda item. And I think I understand the logic that Tricia was trying to use, but what I would say to that is if you have 3 or more commissioners submitting comments on an item on the agenda, there's still transparency there because they should be published on the district's website so the public can read them. The other board members can still read them. And that's all within the Brown Act rules that that's allowable. So if commissioners want to submit comments in advance of a meeting on an item on the agenda, they are allowed to do that. And therefore, they should also be allowed to submit commissioner comments. Sometimes a comment is too long to fit into a verbal comment. And if there's a paper or a newspaper article, or there's ongoing issues with, for example, Brown Act violations, which have been a big problem with the district lately, you can't fit that into a 2 or 3 minute comment. You need to provide a written document that outlines it. So there are reasons for doing that. Another example would be if there were allegations about financial mismanagement. A board member might need to provide documents to substantiate that, and it would be very important and for the public's best interest that those documents be submitted by a commissioner if they had access to them and made public. That's how we prevent fraud, and those sorts of things are very important for the public's best interest, and I think for the best interest of the district as well. So those are just kind of briefly some of the concerns. The reason for this is really, at essence, because the board does not want me to discuss the sexual harassment and retaliation that I've experienced while serving as an elected board member. And sadly, the sexual harassment and the pornography that has been sent to me by a fellow commissioner is something that should be discussed. And this
Commissioner Brennan, I'm going to call you out of order and ask you to stick to the topic or wrap your comments up, please.
So I'd like to point out, Commissioner Raring, that what you're doing is an example of silencing a commissioner who was just talking about sexual harassment, retaliation, some chronic problems that we have on this board. And that type of silencing is detrimental to the district. It continues a pattern of behavior, and it doesn't help us improve and take responsible action for stopping the behavior. It enables it, and it's not in the best interest of the district. I have a lot more that I would like to say on this item, but I'm getting the sense that you're about to cut me off. So can I keep going, or am I going to get cut off?
I'd appreciate it if you'd stick to the topic.
I'm going to mention that I did submit a few items to our general manager related to this topic tonight. There is a paper, which I already mentioned, from Hanson Bridget, where they lay out the newer rules for the Brown Act, which allow the submission of written comments. That is posted on the district's website, so if anybody would like to read that, it's posted with the agenda item tonight. Additionally, I sent an email which discusses some of the concerns that I've already been mentioning, and there are 2 attachments that go with that email. That is also posted on the district's website. So if anybody is interested and wants more information about some of the problems that we face on this board, you can go there for more information. The email that I sent our GM tonight was this afternoon, actually. It says, I'm following up on my 2019 retaliation complaint against Harbor Commissioners Tom Matoush, Nancy Raring, and Virginia Chang Corrali, and my 2020 harassment and retaliation complaint against Harbor Commissioner Tom Matoush, Nancy Raring, and Virginia Chang Corrali. Please include Commissioner Matoush's July 15th, 2020 verbal remarks during the commissioner comments agenda item at the Harbor Commission meeting.
Hi.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Are you on the phone or something? Tricia, I'm sorry, you cut me off. So let me back up because I got cut off. Please include Commissioner Matoush's July 15, 2020 verbal remarks regarding the commissioner comments agenda item at the Harbor Commission meeting with my July 20th, 2020 harassment retaliation complaint. Commissioner
Brennan, I'm going to ask you one more time to stay on topic, please, rather than trying to litigate this again in public.
I am not litigating anything. I am reading an email that I provided to our general manager today, which is published on the district's website, specific to this agenda item. It is already online. So I am just simply reading the content, and it very much talks about the Brown Act. So I am getting there. If you could please not cut me off, I'd really appreciate it.
I think I'm done with your comments on this for now. Commissioner Lorenz, would you like to go ahead and make a comment, please?
Sure.
President Ryring, can I just address one thing about one of the things that was stated, just to make it really clear what the policy does. It only limits the publishing of comments from commissioners, not the public, but from commissioners prior to a meeting. But if a commissioner at a meeting has comments and wants to supplement those and have them and have something posted after, this policy does nothing to that. Again, it's just to promote the Brown Act so you don't have some sort of a de facto meeting or discussion taking place prior to the meeting about an item that's not on the agenda.
Thank you, Tricia. Commissioner Lorenz?
Yes, thank you. Well, under normal circumstances, what Ms. Trish said, or Ortiz said, might work, but these aren't normal circumstances. So let me go through this. The sole purpose of the policy change before us is the continuation of this board and its president's systematic revision and introduction of policies to silence dissent from commissioners and the public. And here we have another example. First, district policy was changed from allowing each commissioner to add one agenda item per meeting. By the way, that was the district had a long history of allowing commissioners to put one item per meeting on an agenda. That was moved to requiring a majority board approval for a commissioner item to be placed on the agenda. Now, those of you that haven't seen very many of our meetings, this may not be obvious, but what this means is that if the majority of the board does not want to hear an item, it'll never see the light of day. So in this case, the commissioner's only recourse is to talk about the issue during commissioner comments. So let's follow the path. This board's president now allows only 2 minutes for commissioner comments, a 60% reduction from our previous commitments, 5 minutes. This board president has moved commissioner comments from the front of the agenda to the end of the agenda, ensuring that it's heard by fewer individuals. This board's president is now attempting to limit publication of commissioner comments using the policy revisions before us. It's very true. The comments will be published at some point, but later. So it doesn't allow for, again, for complete discussion. So I have to ask you, what are you all afraid of saying? And this bit about the Brown Act having violations of the Brown Act because the commissioners are putting items on their comments that might be the same thing. Well, during our regular meetings, when we were all in public, we would walk in with a piece of paper, which was our comments, and put them on the table, and the commissioners would speak. And we were all adults, and we avoided any potential Brown Act problems. So I don't see how that at all is relevant. So again, I'll have to ask you all, what are you afraid of us saying?
Commissioner Chen Carali.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you for your clarification, Tricia. I agree with you about the Brown Act situation, and I think that this policy will help clarify this. But I do want to remind Commissioner Lorenz that the 2-minute time limit was actually implemented by Commissioner Brennan when she was president in 2019. So yeah, I will ask y'all the same question. What are you afraid of? And with that, I would like to call for the question.
Great, Melanie, or
We have to
Commissioner
vote to
Brennan?
call for the question, by the way.
All right, so Melanie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
I'm just like to point out again
We're
that
calling for the question right now.
I would appreciate it if I was not muted during the meeting. I would appreciate
I
that.
just made a motion to call for the question, and it's not debatable. That's what we're voting on.
We have a new board president.
Can you
No, we don't, but I'm following the Roberts Rules of Order, Commissioner Lorenz, and you know them. Unfortunately, y'all just don't follow it. But we do have a call for the question, and that is what we are voting on now. And I believe that Melanie was doing a roll call.
Can you please not interrupt me? I would
But
appreciate that.
you're not. I have a motion on the table. We are voting for that motion. Melanie was in the middle of a roll call. Can we at least finish that motion?
So I have a point of order, which
There's
is
no point. I have a motion on the table which precedes.
you can
your
make a point of order at any time during a meeting. And I have a point of order, which is I would appreciate it if commissioners were not muted during the meeting, because some commissioners, such as yourself, Commissioner Chen Carali, seem to not be muted, but others are muted.
What are you talking about?
I'm pointing out that you are not muted right now when it's my time to speak.
I've made a motion. She's doing roll call. We're not all muted.
So please let me
Lizzie,
speak.
can you
because
please
it's-
mute Lizzie? Can you please mute the commissioner so Melanie can do a roll call, please? And you can just unmute each commissioner as roll call is being taken. Thank you so much.
Of course, President Ryring.
Commissioner Brennan?
I had to unmute, so that took me a minute. Can you please restate the motion?
We're calling for the question.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. No, thank you.
Commissioner Chen Carali?
Yes. Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
No.
Commissioner Ryring?
Aye.
Commissioner Mateusz?
Aye.
Great. Thank you, Melanie. We're going to move on to item number 4, designation of chief negotiators.
You need, President Ryrie,
Oh,
you need to,
yes.
that was just to call the question. Now you need to
Oh,
vote
I'm
on
sorry.
the
Now
item.
we need to do roll call for the item. I'm sorry. Thank you. So, Melanie, roll call for for the item number D3 to amend policy 3.2.
Commissioner Brennan?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'd just like to point out that I've been muted, and I would appreciate it if I was not muted. I don't think it's right to mute commissioners during the meeting. My vote for this is no.
Commissioner Chang Corrali?
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
No.
Commissioner Ryring?
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush?
Aye.
All right, thank you, Melanie. We're going to now move to item D4, designation of chief negotiators. Mr. Pruitt, and I think, well, go ahead. I know that we have an action before we go into closed session here.
Good evening once again, commissioners. As required, the district needs to designate chief negotiators in negotiating with the unions. The operating engineers, Local 3, has made a request to the Harbor District, and to discuss this matter further with the union, staff is recommending the board confirm the general manager and add the director of administrative services as the district's designated representatives. This designation must take place in open meeting in public session prior to any closed session on a specific matter. This recommendation is in accordance with Government Code 54957.6. Currently, pursuant to District Policy 6.1.20, the general manager is designated as the management representative, as well as any person designated by the general manager. My recommendation for motion is to confirm the designation of the general manager and add the director of administrative services as a designated representative for discussions with the operating engineers, Local number 3.
Thank you, Jim. I'm going to move that we confirm the designation of the GM and add the director of administrative services as the designated representative for discussions with operating engineers, Local number 3. Commissioner Brennan.
Again, as a commissioner, I should not have to unmute myself and be muted by the board president.
Commissioner Chang Corrali, do you have a second?
I am not finished yet. I'm not finished yet. Thank you. I'd like to say that it was my intention to make a motion, and I was not able to make a motion because I was not called upon, even though my hand was raised. And it is tradition and standard that the board president not make all the motions. Other people on the board should have an opportunity to make motions and to second motions. But because the board president mutes the commissioners, we are not allowed to do that. And that is wrong. Thank you.
Commissioner Chang Corrali.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Melanie, roll call, please.
You should, I think there's public comment.
Oh, John Owen.
Again, your commitment to the rules is just hysterical, Miss Ryring. You used the Robert's Rules of Order like a tool to bang on people when it's to your advantage, and then you ignore violations of the rules when it's to your advantage. And it says a real lot about you, what you have descended to. At any rate, for people who might be watching this, that don't know what the heck these people are talking about at this point, because of the sloppy nature of the way Ms. Raring runs the system, and because she runs it as though it's hers to run like a fiefdom, there was a screw up at last meeting, and they've pointed out what staff or what was being asked for by the union was they want some more money. They expect to get paid hazard pay, which is they should be embarrassed to even ask for it. There are people at Safeway who work far more important jobs than anybody out there driving around a cart at the Harbor District who aren't getting paid hazard pay. They did get paid an extra $1 or $2 for a couple of weeks, but that's all dropped out. There are cops up in Contra Costa County who are mocking other unions for asking for more money under these circumstances when the country is basically at war with a virus that has brought all of this pain to all of our lives. And so that's what's going on here, folks. The union wants more money. They ain't got enough. Ms. Corrali likes to pay the union guys. She pays them well over at the fire district she works at, and she's going to pay these guys really good too. They already got great pay. So she wants to buy their votes with your dollars. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands raised on this item. So where were we? Did we have a roll call on this, Melanie?
No.
So can we do the roll call, please?
Commissioner Brennan?
Again, I've been muted. Could you please restate the motion?
I'd be happy to do that. The motion is to confirm the designation of the general manager and add the director of administrative services as the designated representatives for discussion with operating engineers local number 3.
I'm voting yes.
Commissioner Chang Corrali?
Oh, aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Aye.
Commissioner Mateusz?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryring?
Aye. Great, and I think do we take a motion to move to closed session?
You can just go to closed session.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tricia. Commissioner Chang Corrali?
Do you want to hear the consent item first, or do you want to go to closed session first? That was item number 1.
Yeah, well, we're in the middle of this item now. I think we should go to closed session, then we'll do the consent when we get back. But thank you for asking.
So President Ryring, you should just confirm that there's no public comment before going into the closed session. On the closed
Okay.
session.
I do see Commissioner Brennan's hand raised.
Again, I'm having to unmute to speak because I've been muted by the board president. But I'd just like to point out that it is rude to not take the consent item that a member of the public asked to have pulled before we go into closed session. That just forces the public to have to wait through closed session to hear an item that they're interested in. So I would ask that we give consideration to members of the public and we have the consent item heard before we go to closed session so that the public doesn't have to wait.
President Ryring, I see John Ullum's hand raised.
John Ullum, go ahead. I'm not really sure if he's online, and I think he already did make a comment about this agenda item, so I think we're ready to move to closed session. Lizzie, can you create a breakout room for us?
Yes, I can. One moment, please.
extend the rent deferral program for 3 more months or until September 30th, 2020, with the same deadline of June 30th, 2021 for full payment. To date, there have been 7 birth renters that have signed up for the program, 2 of which have asked for further deferral. Staff recommends approval of 3 more months of deferral. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Julie. So commissioners, you're unmuted. You can, or Lizzie, can you unmute the commissioners so we can discuss this item?
Through the chair.
Yes. Commissioner Chankarali.
I would like to make a motion to amend the motion made on May 20th, 2020 to extend waivers for 3 more months as shown below, out to September 30th, 2020.
Great. I will second that.
Commissioner Brennan, if you could accept my request to unmute Commissioner Brennan.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because it kept flashing muted. I'd be interested to get the part of the staff report that we heard before on the financial analysis of waiving some of our fees. Is that something that, Julie, you could refresh us on?
Sure. Some of the waivers for non-essential businesses and essential businesses that remain closed, there was an alternative motion that if you forgave rents for the period of April 1st to June 30th of 2020, that would be approximately $39,000 for waiver of berthers, slip holders, and mooring patrons. 100% forgiveness would be $816,000. And for essential businesses that remained open but experienced hardship, it would be approximately $36,000 would be the cost of 3 months of forgiveness for rent and birth holders. Is that the information that you were asking about?
Yeah, and have we heard, and this, I guess this is more of a question for Jim or John Morin. Have we gotten any feedback from our tenants that they are struggling financially and that they, I mean, what's the feedback on how things are? I would imagine everybody's struggling financially right now. I would imagine that's the case, but have we received any feedback from anybody since instituting this initially?
No specific feedback from anybody that I'm aware of.
Okay. I know there were some tenants on this Zoom meeting earlier, but we were in closed session for a long time, so I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't drop off, in waiting for us to come back. Is there public comment? Do we have any public comment?
Not that I see.
Okay. So I guess my big concern is, while I certainly want to continue to support our tenants, I don't know if we're going far enough with that support. And I think we need to do some outreach with the tenants and find out how business is going, and maybe business is thriving. I don't know. But I think that that's important information for the board to be aware of before making decisions about how to handle this. I'd like to hear some specific information from our tenants. And so it just sounds like we don't really have that right now.
Well, back in May, the board made a ruling or decided on how we would handle the rents and the rent forbearances. Today's staff report was more of a few people have come forward and said that they still need more time. We're not talking large numbers, but they're still out of work and they need more time. And as they've specifically asked for extensions. And really what it is if the board extends it by 3 months, then the district does not have to follow policy and start the notice to vacate. So this really just stops that process altogether.
Okay, I'm confused, Jim, because I just asked you if you'd gotten any feedback and you said no, but now you're saying that you did get some feedback.
I have not gotten any specific feedback from any of the businesses. This is a few tenants, according to the staff, that.
Oh, well, when I say tenants, I mean, to me, they're all tenants. The businesses are tenants as well.
So it's a very small number of tenants have asked for extensions on their leases or extension of the lease forbearance.
For their slips.
For their slips.
Got it. Okay.
About.
Yeah, I feel like we need to do more outreach and get a sense of, you know, how people are doing financially. If we could do some kind of a survey or some sort of, you know, check-in with the tenants to get more information. I definitely want to get a sense of where this is going. And, you know, if tenants are not going to be able to afford to pay us back after this, you know, maybe we do another 3-month extension, and then maybe we have to do another one after that, given that COVID is surging. We don't really know where this is going. At what point do we come up with a more comprehensive approach? And where is the information to base such an approach on? You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like we just don't have a lot of info right now.
So tonight, again, is just for the 3-month extension. If the board wants us to go out and do a survey of all the leases again to gather that information, we'd be happy to do that.
Well, I think, you know, I do think that our relationship with our tenants is critical to the success of the district. So we absolutely ought to be, you know, checking in with them quarterly to, you know, see how things are going given the nature of the crisis. So I don't know what mechanism we could come up with for that, but somehow we need to have, I feel like at this time when there's a pandemic and there's, you know, illness and financial hardship, that we need to figure out a way to improve our communication with our tenants. And I know we did have, you know, we have gotten feedback from some of our live aboard tenants recently about some of the concerns they were having related to public health issues and the restroom facility and whatnot. So, and I'm really pleased that staff has jumped all over that and is making improvements to the tenant restroom facility so that it's going to be safer, and it's also going to be, it's going to be better ventilated. So we are, you know, our staff is like being very proactive in working with the tenants, which I think is really great. But I think we want to be proactive on the business side too, and just, you know, trying to find out what needs to be done to keep these businesses intact so that when the economy comes back, they're ready to go, because they're irreplaceable, really. I mean, we're not going to just find a whole bunch of new tenants overnight. If our tenants go under, then we go under, you know? So I know we're spread thin dealing with all of these things, but I'm wondering if there's somehow a way that we could try to cull that information and just create a better communication mechanism. And if it's a workshop, like a Zoom workshop where we can get feedback from the tenants, I would really strongly support that. But I would want that workshop to be noticed as a special meeting so that commissioners could at least sit in and listen to what the tenants are saying. Because I think we need, as commissioners, I think we need to get that direct feedback from our tenants so that we're not making decisions that are detached from their hardship.
So we have a motion and a second on the table. Virginia, if you don't have any comment, let's, I think we can call for the vote on this. Commissioner Jane Crowley, yeah? Yeah, I had asked Lizzie to unmute everybody for this discussion. I don't know what's happening.
Oh, so, well, yes, I was coughing. That's why I wanted to mute.
Oh, okay.
So I want to just say that the motion on the table, I think, will help tenants. And I think without compromising the fact that, you know, we as a district rely on, I mean, we are an enterprise district as well. So that's all I have to say. I'm ready to vote on the motion.
Can I make one last comment and then I'll be ready to vote? I agree that this is going to be helpful because it basically kicks the can down the road on when the tenants have to pay us, which any grace period at this point could be very helpful. But I think we need to be ready to reevaluate this when this 3 months is up and have a real solid check-in and glean a better understanding of what would be most beneficial for our tenants and get a better sense of, you know, how long are we going to need to do this, or do we need to waive part of their rent so that they're not indebted and can pick up and go on with their business. So I'd really like to have that discussion if it looks like some of the businesses are in jeopardy. And I think we need the outreach to try to discern what's going on there. So I just want to really focus on keeping the communication open. So next time when this comes up, we're better informed about what would best benefit our tenants and help them stay in business.
Melanie, are you ready to do the roll call on this motion?
Yep. Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Chan-Carali?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryring?
Aye, the motion carries. And I think we're going to go back to closed session now, and we need to notify Commissioners Matoush and Lorenz. Lizzie, can you set us up in a breakout room?
I sure can. One moment, please.
Thank you.
Tricia, to comply, do we need to announce what this closed session's about?
No, I think we already have one closed session mentioned on the agenda, and we're just going back to that closed session.
Okay, thank you.
President Ryring, the breakout room has been opened. President Ryring, it appears as everyone has returned from the breakout room.
Great. Thank you very much. We do have something to report out. We have given the general manager direction to develop a policy to address the concerns brought by the labor union. And I think we're ready for Commissioner Chan-Carali. Lizzie, can you unmute the
I'll
commissioners?
make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Tom has his hand up.
I can't even see him. Tom, go ahead.
Second.
Everybody should be unmuted right now.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what the report out was. Could you restate it?
Reported out that we've given the general manager direction to develop a policy to address the concerns brought by the labor union.
Okay, thank you.
And I just made a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Great.
Well, I
Roll
think-
call, Melanie?
Commissioner Brennan,
Aye.
Commissioner Chang Corrali,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryring,
Aye. Thank you,
Commissioner
Melanie. Good-
Matoush.
Oh, wasn't that everybody? I'm
Matoush,
sorry.
Commissioner Matoush.
Great. Did we have a
Tom,
response?
you're on mute.
Okay, I just got unmuted. Aye.
All right. Thank you, Melanie. That concludes our agenda for this evening. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Did everybody's system freeze up?